Welcome to a special episode of the Crimson Chronicles Podcast. Today we're diving deep into one of the most innovative chapters in college football history, the Wishbone offense. Our guest is Keith Dunnavant, who, in addition to being a New York Times best-selling author, is also an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Keith served as executive producer on the acclaimed documentary Wishbone, which explores the origins, evolution, and impact of this legendary offense. In this episode, you'll hear the story behind the Wishbone, insights from the documentary, and Keith's unique perspective as both a writer and filmmaker. Let's get started.
Well, Keith, shifting to your documentary, The Wishbone, an outstanding piece that came out in July of this year and is frequently shown on SEC Network and ESPN family of networks, but outstanding job.
Thank you.
When did you realize that story needed to be told?
I've been wanting to tell that story for more than a decade. And Chip Reeves directed that, and my heart on that film just did an outstanding job. And the entire team, we had a great team working on that film. And Scott Seepers and all the great folks at ESPN Films bought into the idea. The initial thing that to me made it a documentary is that it was the power of desperation that united Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama over that period of a few years. They were all in difficult straits. And of course, I grew up, I remember the 71 Southern Cal game, and remember vividly the Alabama's dominant Wishbone years, and covered the tail end of that as a young sports writer. And I interviewed a number of the other, Texas and Oklahoma people over the years. So we're proud of that film, and feel like that he tells an important story that is deeply into that era of college football, but also, like I said, the desperation aspect of it, it really kind of transcends in veins, taps into a different, deeper vein that is culturally significant.
Keith, as somebody who came of age during the Wishbone era, it was deeply meaningful to me to see that story told, and it resonated at just an incredibly deep level. But I think one of the things that I love that you did was really considering the contributions of Emery Ballard and Darrell Royal and Coach Bryant. And they all made different contributions to shape the Wishbone's success. Could you just briefly kind of take each one of those three and give a little bit of the significance of each one to the entire arc of the story?
Well, of course, Emery Ballard had been a great high school coach. Darrell Royal was struggling a little bit when Emery came in, and he said, I've got this wrinkle, and the first game they didn't do too well. It took them a while to get chugging, but next thing you know, they win 30 straight games with his offense. And they have a guy named James Street who, in our current world, we remember great Terry Davis from Bogalusa, Louisiana. Well, who learned that offense in like 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Well, James Street was about the same way. That he was the first guy to do it. And James Street was so perfect for that role. And if James Street, doesn't accomplish what he accomplished, there's no Terry Davis, there's no J.C. Watts, there's no Stedwood Shealy, all these guys who come behind. And so Darrell was struggling, and Darrell needed to find something, and he was a guy who he was a smart guy, and he knew that he needed to take a chance. To me, the thing that just staggers the imagination, and this is one of the things we had the most fun with in the film, is the fact that Darrell could be convinced to give it to Oklahoma. Now,
Yeah.
let's pretend that
was
this is
amazing.
2025, and the coach at Alabama has a new offense that's going great guns, and he gets a call from the OC at Auburn. I don't think you have the same conversation. So it's just, it's remarkable what happened. And then, of course, the ultimate irony, of course, of that situation is that when Barry Switzer took over and just ran it to death, and it just became the ultimate, in terms of statistically at least, the greatest Wishbone offense. And the offense becomes more powerful than Darrell Royal's ability to control it. And really, the success of Oklahoma had a big impact on forcing him, to make the decision to retire. And then, of course, we all remember, the great clandestine switch in 71 and summer 71 for Coach Bryant. That, Coach Bryant was seriously considering hanging it up. He had seriously considered going to, take a big money offer to go to the Dolphins the year before. And, it's I think that if you take the Wishbone switch and the Wishbone era out of Alabama football, Coach Bryant is not the figure that we know today from history.
Yeah, Keith, we interviewed Gary Rutledge along with Jeff, and Gary was there during that transition, although he was redshirted the year that they transitioned to the Wishbone in 71. But he was there, and he told about the team going to back to the regular offense from the previous year when the SEC Skyriders came into town, so they wouldn't see what they were up to. But nowadays, back to your example, if Alabama tried a new offense out, it would be on social media within minutes.
Absolutely.
From all the eyes that are seeing practice. But what do you think? How did Texas and Oklahoma switch to the Wishbone affect Coach Bryant's decision to go, and why do you think he went to it? We were scoring a lot of points under the old offense, but we weren't winning games. We were getting outscored. And the thing about that Southern Cal game that is so unique is the Wishbone was indeed a surprise to Southern Cal, but sometimes the defense does not get the credit that they deserve.
You're absolutely
because
right.
we held them to 10 points.
You're absolutely right.
So
think about how ordinary the defense was in 1970. I mean, let's just be honest. In 69 and 7, the defense was very ordinary. And, you had a drop back pass for Scott Hunter, who was putting together a lot of yardage, scoring a lot of points, but they were 6-5 and 6-5-1. So the defense, of course, they were turning the ball over a lot as well, because of they had started passing the ball so much. But I think that Coach Bryant, probably the one thing that is kind of lost in that sometimes is that, he made that, I think he made that decision as much for short-term conditions as anything else. I think he saw that he didn't have a great drop back passer. He didn't have another Scott Hunter.
Yeah.
But he had some guys he might be able to run something more resembling the option type offense that they ran in the 60s. So I think there was a natural progression. And then, of course, the reality, of course, is that, it just became perfect for Alabama, because you think about all the guys who came, Rooster Rutledge and Jack O'Leary and Jeff Rupp and Stebbins and Richard Todd and Walter Lewis and all these guys who came in the next decade, who were able to be perfect for running the Wishbone. And some of them were better passers than others, but all of them had the ability to, when you had a one-on-one situation, to burn somebody. And you think about that game, think about that 73 Tennessee game, when uncharacteristically you talk about Rooster, Coach Bryant tells him to call that go route or post or whatever it was, that long bomb to Wayne Wheeler, and
Yes.
80 yards. Woo! And so don't call us. Don't say, well, all we can do is run the ball. So I think that was the great thing that is often missed or forgotten about those Wishbone teams, is because they ran the ball so well, because they controlled the point of attack so well, teams sometimes were lulled into sleep. And next thing, Richard Todd and Jeff Rutley are burning. Particularly when they had a guy like Austin Houston.
Yeah, Gary told us that he every game up until the Tennessee game, they had given the ball to the fullback.
That's right, be a belly play, right?
Ellis, the belly play. Ellis Beck had gotten the carry on every single first play of the game,
Right.
and he faked it to Ellis and threw the bomb to Wayne Wheeler, and Wayne was like 10 yards behind the Tennessee secondary. So what a great game!
Well, and just that reminds me of another back in era. You of course remember the great 65 Orange Bowl. Nebraska outweighed it may have been a better team, but Coach Bryant knew he had to get out of his only passing in certain situations philosophy, and so he basically he tells Steve Sloan before that, okay, I want you to pass anytime you want. And Steve's thinking, who is this guy and what's he done with Coach Bryant? So here it is. It's toward the end of the second quarter, and I think it's 21-7 or something like that. Steve has just put on a clinic, and Coach Bryant sends a player in. He says, Coach Bryant says, you don't have to pass him here.
Well,
Keith,
you talk about the controlling the point of attack and that being the focus of the Wishbone. Is that why the Wishbone was so dominant? What caused the dominance of that offense for really the 70s and into the early 80s?
I think there's a lot of reasons. Certainly, you had great line play. Those guys, there wasn't any of that. Talking about how one of the reasons that were not very good in 69 and 70 was you had a lot of standing around on point of attack and pass block, and that was not Coach Bryant. He did not like that sort of offensive block. So he comes back really as new and novel as the Wishbone was. In a way, it was more knocking guys down point of attack. But at the same time, though that Alabama was blessed with quarterbacks who were able to master the pitch versus, and that was the ball. That was the ball. And then you, of course, you've got to establish the fullback. He's got to be a great blocker. Both halfbacks have got to be great blockers. But you've got to have unselfish play. You've got to be able to block the end. You've got a quarterback. You've got to be able to read that defensive end, rolling down the line, and make that decision. A lot of times, or they got to get rid of that ball, and then they're going to get clocked. So they got to be tough. So many things. They took so many things to make them dominant. But I think that, of course, it also helped that that was the era, getting of that up until about 76. So you had we didn't have the scholarship limitations. We had unlimited teams. So Alabama was able to rotate 7, 8, 9 backs in and out of it. You had lesser teams, just like, how many teams does Alabama have? Alabama's third team could keep them in the game, if not, against most teams. So a lot of things made that offense just perfect relevant.
Well, that was something we had when we had Bruce Arians on earlier this season. That was one of the things Bruce talked about was, he as an assistant coach, seeing Coach Bryant put the fourth string backfield out, and he threw an expletive out about what in the world was Coach Bryant doing, and he said then all of a sudden he realized that it was that the fourth string was fresher and that there was a method to the madness, and he said it really taught him something as a young coach about a different way to look at the game.
What do you think? Okay, that's bring back to something we discussed earlier. How the game changed, how Coach Bryant changed. What do you think about the early 60s? That was Iron Man football, okay? You had very limited substitutes. Most of those guys playing 6. Then you come through transition with the 8 back. Then you come through in the early 70s when you essentially have all these teams that are rotating in and out. Not only were those guys, in many cases, third team was good enough to start. A lot of other, not only were they good, but because they got to play a lot, they had a pride. They didn't care that they were at first team. Richard Todd was a second team quarterback his junior, or his sophomore, but he still played a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Stedman was the second team quarterback his sophomore year.
Yep.
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he still played an awful lot and scored a lot. So
That's right.
the distinction really was blurred. And I think because of that, you had to pride these guys who didn't think of themselves as, we're just going to come in, we're just going to go in, close, whatever. No. We're going to go out here. And this is our time. This is our time.
Mm-hmm.